Hey guys, welcome back. So now I want to talk about this possible crossover between Marvel and DC that as of now, at the time of this video, January of 2020, we have gotten yet another reference to a Marvel DC crossover. And like it's first Doomsday Clock and now it's Thor. So man, we gotta talk about this. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. So now essentially what has set this conversation ablaze within the community recently, it was a tweet from Donny Cates that had mentioned Thor #2 all new next week from the greatest living comics company on earth, Marvel. Which on the surface is like, okay, he writes for Marvel, so I get that. But when you look into the images which were posted with it, this is where the eyebrows start getting raised. And by the way, spoiler warning for potential spoilers for Thor issues 2 through 4 maybe, and definitely for issue 2, but I'm saying it might stretch through issue 4, so just saying. But what I want to do here is go through these 4 panels and talk about what some of this could possibly mean and how it supports these pre-existing teasers for an upcoming Marvel vs. DC mashup. And so starting with the first panel, and I believe all these are from issue 2, which is how it appears from how the tweet read. And when we look at the first panel and we see what appears to be the arrival of the Black Winter, which also appears to be delivered to us through the narration of Silver Surfer Black. And so for anybody who's new here, we had recently talked about the Black Winter when we had talked about issue 1 of Thor, the Devourer King, to where at the time Galactus had crash landed on Asgard, soliciting the help of King Thor. And with his arrival, he had just mentioned that he had just witnessed the Black Winter once again. And so for anyone new here, I got a link down below for my breakdown of Thor issue 1, the Devourer King, to where I go into more description of what the Black Winter is. But in a nutshell, it's essentially the same calamity which ended Galactus's universe before he crossed over into this one as a sole survivor. And with that alone, we know that this threat is big enough to devour pretty much everything. But going forward from here, when we're walked through this narration of the Black Winter just devouring everything, and we're witnessing this threat, which originated from Marvel, consume a number of civilians on a street level. And while we see this, and the narrator's asking like, what would you do? And in asking, insinuating like, would you reach out prayers to your gods? And when this is done, this kid points up and like, you would think he's pointing to Thor. But when we get to the next panel, it's more like the Justice League, with Superman flying past the Daily Planet, and then another look at, quote, a sun god, which essentially is still Superman. But when we keep going, we got clearly what is the Flash, Green Lantern, and Batman. Like straight up the Justice League popping up in an issue of Thor. But even with seeing this, it isn't as far-fetched as you may think, because recently over at DC, when we got the conclusion to Jeff Johns' Doomsday Clock, of which in that conclusion, Dr. Manhattan pretty much ended everything. And really with doing so, when we seen this take place, he had reformed the metaverse, which ultimately cascaded and took effects on the entire DC universe. But what happened after that possibly, just possibly could mean that this also took effect on the Marvel universe as well. Because when we had seen the aftermath of everything that Dr. Manhattan had changed, which teased a number of events which would crescendo all the way out to nearly the 31st century. But among those dates, the one for July 10th, 2030, which speaks of a secret crisis, which throws Superman in a brawl across the universe with Thor himself and a green behemoth stronger than Doomsday, which is most likely the immortal Hulk, who dies protecting Superman from these invaders. And so let's take our time and get into this, because first, just the title, Secret Crisis. That alone sounds like a mashup between Secret Wars and either Final Crisis or Infinite Crisis. Like that alone has Marvel and DC end of all things written all over it. Like Secret Crisis? Come on, man. Like that can't be a coincidence. But taking this from the top, where it mentions Superman in an all-out brawl, a universal-wide brawl between him and Thor, it appears that the events from Donny Cates' run of Thor, which at this point are leading the Herald King, along with other former heralds of Galactus, out to face the Black Winter, to where this all-destroying anomaly, which has a reputation for rebooting universes by consuming their former versions, that this could possibly send Thor into a situation where he sees the DC universe as a threat. And in the case of the DC universe, they see him as a threat as well. But I'm sure it's going to be a whole lot of brawling before they actually get to the realization of who their true enemy is. and it's likely at this point that the two of them won't find out until a green behemoth stronger than Doomsday dies while protecting Superman from the actual invaders. And this green behemoth, who is most likely the immortal Hulk, he'll give his life knowing that he can come back, but also being forced to do so in order to save Superman, either from Thor or once again the true invaders who are threatening both the Marvel and DC universes in this unknown upcoming threat. But the second panel continues to make its references to Aquaman, to the Justice League, which is referred to in this case as the League of Gods, who are said to be as powerful as those you've always known and marveled at. An emphasis on marveled at. But as it goes on to describe this League of Gods, it tells us that they too will look into the Black Winter. And if you guys remember back when we talked about the Black Winter, when you look into it, it'll appear to you in the form of your own true death, which perhaps may even foreshadow Superman at a moment near death, so where in that moment he's saved by a behemoth stronger than Doomsday, but his impending death may appear in the form of Doomsday, when it's actually the true invaders, which causes the Hulk to sacrifice his life to reveal this to the rest of the heroes. And it's just a thought, may get that moment, may not, but when we're also told about the League of Gods, referring to the Justice League, and all of them staring into the Black Winter, ultimately they'll see the stone-faced Avatar, who is their Omega, also known as the One Who Is. And of course, that has got to be Darkseid, because Stoneface, check, Omega, check, and the One Who Is, check, because Darkseid does not do, Darkseid is. But for the League of Gods, the Black Winter, it'll ultimately appear to them as Darkseid. And as the narrator expresses, this league will eventually end up doing the same as all the others, by praying to their gods to save them. Which then takes us to the fourth and final panel, which makes it seem like none of this will work, with the narrator expressing that after this they all will die, and likely referring to the heroes of DC and Marvel alike. And with this we see Thor floating over Planet 1, Clips, which could be a reference to the Lords of Nothing, not really sure at this point, and we'll dive much deeper into more of the meanings after the issue's actually released. But from here, the narrator gives us the response of Thor to all of this happening, of which to all of this, the Herald King says nay. Like, he is not going to let it go down. But however this may play out, it very much seems like another Marvel vs DC, which was originally DC vs Marvel, then it turned to Marvel vs DC, but it sounds like something like this building up right around the corner. And even though the Doomsday references give us dates like 2030, it's still very possible that events of this magnitude can cross over through time and space, with likely the current issues of Thor landing in the future of DC Comics to where what for them is the year 2030. Which is something that wouldn't be too far-fetched, with both sides dealing with both time and multiversal travel in a number of ways prior to this point, almost as if they've been getting prepared on both ends for an event that was just way bigger. And this we had seen like with Justice League traveling into the 6th dimension, where they were shown the possibility of what their future might be, to where ultimately they were in a fight to save the multiverse. But then when the actual time travel kicked in, this was more so when the Justice League went in pursuit for pieces of the totality both in the past and the future, which was a journey that was unsuccessful, but at the same time it's like the narrative of the time travel along with the dimensional travel. And in addition to Doomsday Clock, it's like all of these pieces were just getting us ready for a bigger narrative that took pieces from all of the above. So it's like that way a huge crossover wouldn't seem like it was just coming out of the blue. And so on Marvel's end, a bit of the same can be said, because we also dealt with time travel within Thanos Wins, which not only went millions of years in the future, but within that narrative we also got a flashback to where the Surfer fell from the heavens after fighting with the gods, which could also be a battle that's part of this crossover and part of the Silver Surfer's journey to becoming the Fallen One, which is an insane journey stretched across Thanos Wins to the new Guardians of the Galaxy, to Silver Surfer Black, to Annihilation Scourge, all the way to Thor the Devourer King, and who knows where else from there. But as it appears for this threat that is up and coming, that Thor is going to be the one to save everyone. And from the looks of Tom King's Twitter, and Tom King, he's written for Marvel and DC, but from the looks of his Twitter, it's like he's rooting for Thor already. But let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. Like, where do you think all of this is going? Like, do you feel like on the flip side, like literally Thor is like the Devourer King and he will eventually be the means of which all will end? Because there's so many ways that this could go right now. And personally, I would just love to see some type of reference that ties Dr. Manhattan to the Black Winter, and even if indirectly. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.